Alright, let's start with the comment. Modal for full screen image view begins. Then let's start with the div element and ID as MyModal, and let's call it Modal because Modal is the default class for Modal in Bootstrap. Then get below and let's first define the close button, which is going to be responsible for closing the modal. Then let's create a span tag and let's call it close. This is also a special class of Bootstrap with some sort of styling for the close button. Then write on click attribute and the function to be executed is ClosedModel. This is going to close the modal and we will define this function in JavaScript. Then ampersand times semicolon. This is the code for cross symbol. Then let's define the content for this modal, which are the images. Create a div tag and let's call it modal-content. Now let's define all of the images one by one. Create a div tag and class as MySlides, and we are going to use the same class with all of the images which we are going to define subsequently. Alright, create a div tag for the index number and write class as number text, then the text as 1 by 15 because this is going to be the first image out of the 15 images that we will define. Then create a image tag and the source as img/, and be careful that we need to follow the same sequence of images that we have followed in the image grid section. So the sequence is 1451, portfolio 01.jpg, and let's give it a class as portrait-image. We are going to use this class to resize the image to fit the viewport or the visible part of the browser so that we don't get scroll bars or something and the image does not get overflow. So this completely defines one image. Now let's copy this div tag and paste it so that we can get the rest of the images by making appropriate changes. This is the second image, portfolio 04. This is a landscape image, so we are going to use a different class for this one. Let's call it landscape-image. Let's copy this, paste it. Let's create the rest of the images first and then we can make the changes. Alright, 1451, and this portfolio 01 is the portrait image. Then change the index numbers. Alright, then after that we have 24513. Portrait-image. Then the sequence is 4 1 2 3 2 5. The one is a portrait image, rest of them are landscape. So this completes all of the images. Now let's define the control buttons or the next and the previous buttons. create a link tag, that is a tag. Let's call it as prev. This is the previous button. Then on click attribute, change slides in brackets -1, because this is going to open the previous image. Then the text as ampersand hash 10094 semicolon. This is the code for that left arrow. In the same way, let's define the next button, and this time with the change slides function, write 1 and not -1, because we want the next image to be opened when we click on this button. And the code as ampersand hash 10095 semicolon. So this completes the HTML part for the modal. Let's start with the CSS. Let's reference the div tag containing the modal by writing .modal, because this is the class that we have used with it. And display as none, because we want the modal to be hidden until and unless we click on it. Position as fixed. Z index as 1, because we want the modal to be on top of other elements. Padding as 5 pixels top bottom and 0 pixels left right. Then the position for modal, left 0, then top 0, so that the modal starts with the top left corner. Width as 100% and height as 100%. Overflow auto. We will try our best to resize the images in a way that we do not get overflow, but in case if there is overflow, we need to have that scroll bar. Background -color. In simple words, RGB part has defined black color and 0.8 refers to the level of opacity. And since we have defined the basic class of the modal, now let's start with the JavaScript to make the modal functional, so that we can open up the modal and see it while we make changes to the slides of the modal. So it is better to have the modal functional before making any styling to it, so that we can see the styling parts as we go on making the changes. Then let's start with the OpenModel function. This is the first function that is going to be executed when we click on any of the image grid. Get below all of the codes and create a script tag. Then let's start with the OpenModel function. So we are going to get this task done by changing the display property of the modal that we have just set to none in the CSS. So write document.getElement by ID, open brackets within single quote my-modal dot style dot display inline -flex. So this is going to make the modal visible, and you can see this is the display as none property that we have stated in the CSS, and the JavaScript is just going to change this property to inline -flex, which will in turn make the modal visible. Now let's define the ClosedModel function, which is responsible for closing the modal. And we are going to achieve this by doing exactly the opposite that we have done in the OpenModel function. We are going to change the display property to none again. Write document.getElement by ID, open bracket within single quotes my-modal. This will get the element which has this ID, which is our modal, and then change the display property to none, so the modal becomes invisible again. Now let's define a variable slide index JS and initialize to 1. Now let's call the showSlides function by passing the value of the slide index JS variable that we have just defined in the previous line. In short, calling this showSlides function with the initial value of 1 is going to hide all of the slides initially. Now let's define a function to fulfill the task of the next and the previous buttons. Create a change slides function because that is the function that we have used in the next and the previous buttons on click attribute. Then call the show slides function passing the value of the slide index JS variable and incrementing it or decrementing it depending upon the button which was clicked. For example, if the next button was clicked, then the value of the slide index JS will be incremented by 1, and if the previous button was clicked, then the value of this slide index JS will be decremented by 1, and then the show slides function will be called with that value of slide index JS. Then let's display the image whose thumbnail was clicked, and you can observe that when a thumbnail is clicked, two functions are getting executed. First is the OpenModel, which is responsible for opening the model, and then second one is the current slide, which signifies which image has to be opened up in the model. So let's define current slide function. Alright, then call show slides function with the value of the slide index JS as n, and n is the parameter that was passed on by the image. For example, if the image grid of the first image is clicked, then this current slide function will be executed by passing the value 1. And now let's define the main function for operating this image viewer, the show slides function. Let's create a temporary variable I. Now first of all, let's get all the elements which has this class as my-slides so that we have a count of the total number of slides or the images. Write variable slides JS equals document.getElements by class name, open bracket, within double quotes, my-slides. So this variable slide JS is going to get all of the elements with this class MySlides, and you can observe that we have used this MySlides class with all of the images that we have defined inside the model. And now we need to take care of two conditions. First is the overflow and second is the underflow. Overflow is when we are on the last image and we click on the next image again. In that case, we want the first image to be displayed again. This is the overflow condition. If n is greater than slides js.length, or the slide which is to be opened is greater than the total number of slides present in the model, then change the slide index JS to 1, that is open the first slide. And now let's take care of the underflow condition, that is if we are on the first slide and we click on the previous button, we want the last image to be opened up again. If n is less than 1, that is if we are on the first slide and we click on previous, n will become 0, which is less than 1. Then slide index JS equals slides js.length. So in that case, we want the last image to be opened up. Now let's hide all of the images initially. Create a for loop, I equals 0 and I is less than slides js.length, so that I will run once for each of the images. Let's say we have 15 images, so I will run for 15 times. Then I++ slide js brackets I dot style dot display as none. Then let's show the only slide which has to be opened up because of the click on the corresponding image grid. Write slides js in brackets slide index js -1 dot style dot display equals block. We have written that -1 because in JavaScript we start the counting from 0. In HTML we have started the counting from 1. So this completes the JavaScript part as well. So the model is not opening up. Let me check if I have made any spelling mistakes. Okay, first of all, let me close this comment out. And secondly, in this get element by ID, E, B and I has to be capital, and same for this ClosedModel function, make this B as capital. Alright. Now refresh in the browser and the model is opening up. And we have scroll bars. First one is for the model and the second scroll bar is for the body. Alright. And we have this navigation bar on top of the model. Now let's style this model content class. Right, position as relative, then margin as auto. This margin as auto is going to keep margin in a way that this model content is in center. Then padding as 0, width as 85%, max hyphen width as 1200 pixels, border as none. Save it. We can see the next and the previous buttons, and the close button is most probably hidden under the navigation bar. Then background color, we want the background color to be transparent. Alright, looks better. Now let's style the MySlides class that we have used with all of the images. Now let's center align the images by styling that MySlides class. Alright, and now let's resize the images so that we don't get scroll bars and the images are within the viewport and not greater than the viewport. And we have used two classes with all of the images, either this portrait image or the landscape image. So now let's style the portrait image. Write dot portrait hyphen image and then height as 98 vh, and this vh is a relative length unit, and 1 vh means the element will get the 1% of the height of the viewport, and viewport is the browser's window size, and we have used 98 vh, which means this portrait hyphen image will get 98% of the height of the window size or the viewport. Alright, refresh. The image is resized. Anyway, now let's style the landscape hyphen image class to resize the landscape images as well. And for the landscape image, we are going to use width property, because for landscape image we have wider images. So write width as 76 VW. VW is also a relative length unit, and 76 VW means it will get 76% of the width of the viewport. Alright, refresh. And you can see the images are resized well for the slideshow or the full screen image viewer. Now let's style the close button. Write dot close, color as hash triple F, white color, position as absolute because we want the close button to be there always, irrespective of the size of the screen or the size of the images. Top as 10 pixels, so it will be at a distance of 10 pixels from the top of the viewport. Right as 25 pixels, so that it will be at a distance of 25 pixels from the right of the viewport. Then font hyphen size as 48 pixels. Font hyphen weight bold, and transition 0.3 seconds ease. The close button is still hidden behind the navigation bar. Alright, now let's style the hovering effect of the close button. Color as hash triple F, we want the same white color. And text decoration as none because we don't want the close button to get underlined when we hover over it. And cursor as pointer. Now let's style the next and the previous buttons. Cursor as pointer, position as absolute, top as 50% so that it will be in the middle of the screen, and width as auto, padding of 16 pixels all around, margin hyphen top minus 50 pixels, color as white or hash triple F. Still not visible. It is somewhere here. Let's override any color defined for this. Write exclamation mark important. This will override any color property defined before this in Bootstrap. Then font hyphen weight bold. You can see the buttons now. Then font hyphen size as 3 em. Em is also a relative length unit. And transition is 0.3 or let's say 0.6 seconds ease. And border hyphen radius 0 space 3 pixels space 3 pixels space 0. And user hyphen select as none. Let's refresh. And the buttons are pretty big and fine. Now let's style the next button on the right side. Right as 0. This will position the right button on the right side. Then border hyphen radius as 3 pixels space 0 space 0 space 3 pixels. Refresh. Perfect. I think I have misspelled the portrait-image class while defining the images in the model. We will see that after this. Let's first style the hovering effect of these two buttons. Dot next colon hover dot pre colon hover. Background hyphen color RGBA 0,0,0,0,0.8. So the RGB part defines our black color and the alpha defines opacity. Hovering effect is also fine. We are still getting the scroll bar because of the navigation bar on top of the image viewer. Anyway, let's style the number text, which shows the index number of the images. Color as gray, because the gray will be visible if the background is white or black. And font hyphen size as 18 pixels. Font family as Lato. Sans serif. Padding as 8 pixels top bottom. 50 pixels left right. Position as absolute. Top 0 left 10 pixels. And since we have defined this number text inside the MySlides class, so it will be at the top of the MySlides class and at a distance of 10 pixels from left. I think it is getting blocked by the navigation bar, but anyways, you can see that the images are well scaled and we are not getting any scroll bars. And now let's correct the spelling of the portrait in rest of the images.